All right, so we haven't done one of these in a while, and what I mean by one of these is a top 10 cards list. This wouldn't be a YouTube channel if we didn't have more top 10 lists, right? So we're going to do, actually, top 10 cards from Call of the Mountain. We are going to do top 10 cards. We're including champions. We're mixing everything in here. There is only one champion on the list, though. So you guys will see what champion that is as we start to go through here. But as always, my name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works. If you're new to the channel, you are in the right spot for Legends of Runeterra content. Absolutely love this game, love making content for it. We do tournaments, we do decks, we do top 10 lists like we are right now. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to smash that like button if you do like this particular video. And without further ado, let's get into the top 10 cards for Call of the Mountain. Alright, so before we begin, I do want to just get into what this is based on. So generally speaking, this isn't an exact science or anything, but I just want to give you guys an idea of where my head's at. So 30% of why these cards made it on the list is just their general overall power, right? Like how good of an effect is the card, how, possibly broken is the card, is it undercosted for what it does, etc. Another 30% is kind of, what does the card just existing do for the metagame? What kind of impact does it have by just being in existence in the card game, right? So an example, I always use Ruination as an example. Ruination might not be one of the best cards in the game, but it is a fairly okay card. It has a use, and it is in certain decks, but you also need to play around it when your opponent has 9 mana, right? So just one of those, meta check card type deals. And the last 40%, so it's a little bit more weighted towards this, is what impact does the card have directly on the current meta? It's a new set. How has that card changed the game or changed the meta as we knew it prior to Call of the Mountain coming out? So with that said, we'll get into all 10 cards. There are some special mentions that I will go over at the end as well that just barely missed out on the list, but I do feel like they do need to be mentioned. And you're probably going to wonder why the hell they're not on the list as I go through these, right? So number 10, we got Poro Cannon. Yep, that's right. We are starting off spicy with some Poro Cannon action. I just realized I gotta shave too. Huh? This is, woo! I'm getting a little hairy there. But anyways, Poro Cannon, hell of a card. Love it for multiple reasons, not just because Poros are a meme and Poros are cool. Really, the reason why this makes it on the list is because it adds value to so many archetypes. That being one cost with Professor Yip. It is more viable because of this card. Not that it's a good archetype, but still. Poros in general, like the Poro archetype. Again, not a great archetype, but still helps it out. And most importantly, especially why this is on the list, discard aggro is now much better because of this card. Do not underestimate the power of elusive Poros. Any card that is able to add value to multiple archetypes, and especially have Poro in the title, seems good. It's burst speed, discard, helps with Jinx, helps with Draven, stuff like that. So all in all, I think this is one of the better cards to come out. I love that they have something like this in the game with Call of the Mountain. Number 9, Troll Chant. All right, this card, love this card. It's basically like 2 Elixir of Irons. However, it's a little bit more difficult to play around, right? Mystic Shot, you play around 2 damage. Elixir of Iron, you play around them increasing a unit by 2 health. This is -2 attack on one thing, +2 health on another. It's a lot of math for my head. I don't really want to do that work most of the time. So if you're in a game and you have to play around Troll Chant, and it does still only cost 2 mana, so a lot of times your opponent will have 2 mana up, it's just kind of a pain in the ass to, if there's multiple units on the board, you got to go through all the possible scenarios of them using Troll Chant. Kind of feels bad. Plus, this does synergize well with Culling Strike. So something like mid-range Frostbite, where Trifarian Assessor was nerfed slightly. Now, this does feel like a little bit of a buff to the archetype, I guess, as far as cards are concerned. It did used to play a lot of Elixir of Iron. I imagine Troll Chant is just the better choice in most scenarios for it. And like we mentioned previously, this is sort of a, not necessarily a meta check card. It's not something that is incredibly impactful if you don't play around it, but it is a stat boost, combat trick. So you do have to kind of play around it most of the time. So just it existing makes you think a little bit differently when you play the game. Number 8 is Pale Cascade. I love this card's design. Again, it just existing, it means it's another 2-mana spell you have to play around, at least when you're playing against Targon. And up until Call of the Mountain, Static Shock was really the only combat trick with draw. So now we have Pale Cascade that also has draw. Now the draw doesn't necessarily always impact that battle. It is burst speed, so if you're in combat and you play this burst speed, you could theoretically draw into another burst speed combat trick, I guess. So that is a little bit impactful as opposed to Static Shock, which is only fast speed, so it resolves after, theoretically, the combat resolves. So it's just something to take into consideration. But I do like it. It does push the aggressive archetype forward a little bit, too, giving it a little bit of draw. Obviously, being more on the aggressive side with the +2 attack and only +1 health. So overall, love this card. It is another card that we have to play around. This will stick around for quite some time. All right, number 7, Lucky 7. We got Doom Beast. I loved this card when it was revealed. The first thing I thought was Life Drinker from Hearthstone. If you don't know what that is, right there, one of these sides. Life Drinker was a 3-cost 3/3, basically drained 3. This is, sorry, 4-cost 3/3. This is costing 1 less at 3. You get 1 less health and only drain 2. Another downside of this is that it does need to be a Nightfall effect. So I actually like that. When you look at a comparison like that, I like that it seems a little bit more difficult to play than the Life Drinker. It seems like you're getting a little less value just because it shows that there's not as much power creep potentially in Legends of Runeterra. But this card has powered aggro forward ever since the Crimson Disciple nerf, only dealing 1 damage now. This feels like a very good replacement, at least in the Shadow Isles region. And getting this with something like Stalking Shadows just feels so satisfying to get 2 of these bad boys off. I mean, hell, you can Stalking Shadows into it. That way you get the Nightfall effect because you already played the Stalking Shadows as your first card. Just feels really, really good. And the drain is under... I feel like a lot of people underestimate the drain. Yes, it does 2 damage to your opponent, but sometimes that drain healing you actually allows you as the aggro player to live that extra 1 turn you need to just top deck that extra 2 damage with Mystic Shot or whatever it is you're looking for. All right, and you guys were wondering what the 1 champion on the list here was. Well, it's going to be in the number 6 spot. The number 1 card, I feel like you guys probably know what the number 1 card is. Like if you play the game, I think you know... You might know what I put as number 1. But Trundle. Trundle at the number 6 spot. Love this card. Love the design. I think he's by far the best champion that was released. You could make some arguments otherwise, but man, this card is so good. It's just the whole wording stones on turn 3 into turn 4 Trundle just feels absolutely amazing. He's stable. He's a very consistent, stable champion to play. He hits the field. He sticks on the field. He's very difficult to remove, and he kind of he's like that pillar that you can build your deck around. See what I did there? See what I did there? Yeah, you call what I did. He's that pillar you can build your ramp deck around that you need, because ramp wasn't as much of a thing until Call of the Mountain came out, and one of the problems with ramp is inconsistency, right? You have these larger units. You can't really stabilize until that point in the game when you can play those larger units. Well, Trundle does just that. He stabilizes, not to mention the pillar that he gets you, Ice Pillar, also helps stabilize, putting that extra kind of blocker on the field, also giving that vulnerable tag to things that you can pick them off with something like Trundle with Regeneration. So just overall, great champion card. And on top of the ramp, we have Behold strategies you can use with him, so multiple strategies as well with Trundle. All right, number 5. We're going to the top 5, and these cards are pretty freaking good. Unspeakable Horror. I said it when this card came out. It's better than Vile Feast. Here's Vile Feast. Here's Unspeakable Horror. It's not a huge difference, but for the most part, it is, I feel, a better card. Now, don't get me wrong. Vile Feast is not going to go away. Vile Feast, that token will still help a lot of decks that either need tokens, spiderlings, or just a blocker in general, like control decks. Spooky Karma comes to mind. You still want those blockers, but Unspeakable Horror, being able to go face, you can put it in an aggro deck. Being able to generate that additional card advantage with that Nightfall unit or Nightfall card, very, very good. I think overall this card is just absolutely amazing, and the fact, this is why I like it the most in this how it impacted the game. This is a card that can be played in aggro and in control. And to be, so useful in both ends of the spectrum there is really, really cool. And I think that's it just shows how well that card was actually designed. All right, so number 4, I want to touch on something quick. If you guys notice, I have not put any Celestial or Invoke cards on this list. This will actually be the only one that's on here, and this one is Starshaping. Now, the reason why Celestial cards aren't on this list because they're randomly generated cards, and they're just inherently powerful, right? They're overpowered. They're supposed to be overpowered, so you can't really compare those accurately. But the Invoke and Celestial mechanic in general, when it first came out, I was like, oh my god, this is busted. Like, these cards are so strong. But they're not. I don't actually have a problem with any of them. The fact that they're slow is a really big drawback and downside, and I think people underestimated that. So there's a reason why they're not on this list. However, Starshaping is a thing. Starshaping, again, similar to Trundle, allows for this whole ramp mechanic and late game mechanics, stuff like War Mother's Call, etc. It's not so much the Celestial card that you get. Sure, you can get some late game tool that you can use. Something like Supernova, obliterate 2 units for 9 mana, feels good. But instead, the heal is where it's at. A burst speed heal for 5, pretty freaking good. It's just really good for ramp decks. Like, one of the problems with ramp decks is you kind of get beat down a little bit by aggro decks early in the game. This provides you that heal that you need. And similar to Catalyst of Aeons, right? Catalyst of Aeons is another burst speed heal, and there's not a whole lot of heal in this game. And 5 health in a 20 health game, 25% of your health, yeah, feels pretty good. So love this card, love what it does for the game and for ramp decks in general. All right, the top 3, I love these cards. This is probably my favorite out of all 10. Stalking Shadows. This card, I am so hesitant to say that this card is fine at 2 mana. I was such a proponent when I first saw this card come out. I was like, this needs to be 3 mana. Like, every card game since the beginning of time, I'm like, draw 2, 3 mana. That's how it works. No questions asked. Although we do have Glimpse Beyond as well. And I just, in looking at how this game is designed and looking at how they designed the regions, it feels like they've been able to fit 2-cost draw into Shadow Isles quite nicely with the additional cost on the card. And what I mean by that is Glimpse Beyond, you tribute a unit. With Stalking Shadows, the other card that you draw is actually ephemeral. So there's a slight drawback. It's not just pay 2, draw 2. I almost said 3. Jesus, that'd be broken. There is a little bit of a downside. Similar to Pick a Card, right? Pick a Card is pay 3 to draw 3, which seems busted. But you're actually shuffling a card back in, and on top of that, they're all fleeting, right? So there is a lot of drawback to that. So overall, I love this card. Getting it, again, I mentioned it earlier, getting 2 Doom Beast feels really good. This card 100% supports aggro, gives aggro that extra refuel that it needs to kind of get through those games where it's just needs a little bit more to do that final 2, 3, 4, 5 damage that it needs to finish out the game. All right, number 2 on this list, probably to nobody's surprise, is Solari Soldier. And I'm actually not even that happy that this is on this list. It just kind of has to be because it's the baseline that Riot has established for Legends of Runeterra. We have the 1-drops. We have Cythria. We have Jagged Butcher. We have Bark Beast. Now we have Solari Soldier. These are all 1 mana 3/3s at heart, but they have some sort of activator or drawback or whatever. So now Cythria, obviously, you're like, she's not a 3/3. She's a 1 mana 2/2. But that is kind of her thing, is she's always going to be a 1 mana 2/2. And she doesn't have any kind of drawback, whereas Bark Beast can be a 1/1. Jagged Butcher can just be a 2/2 if you don't do the Plunder effect. Cythria actually, it has the Elite tag as well, so you could argue that that's kind of her buff in addition to not being a 3/3. So it's just kind of the baseline they've established. This just seems to go along with that. You have the Daybreak, it's a 3/3, and a 1 mana 3/3. Without getting too in-depth, a 1 mana 3/3 is freaking good. This card's going to be around for a while. It's great. It's a fearsome blocker as well, so awesome that they added this for the Targon region. Definitely a card that the new region needed. All right, number 1, folks. Number 1. I actually love that this card exists. I have a lot of thoughts on this card. Hush. Okay. This card, so I actually think it's good at 3 mana. I think this is by far one of the best cards they've released to date. And it's mainly because of Ezreal. This completely changes the way that Ezreal players play the game. If you cannot win with priority and burst speed spells with your Ezreal, you're at risk to losing your win condition via Hush. Another thing you have to play around is it's not always correct to attack with an elusive Ezreal any longer. Because if you attack with an elusive Ezreal and it is hushed, it can now be blocked because it's no longer elusive. That's a big deal to have your Ezreal just blocked away, right? So lots that it does to kind of combat the Ezreal thing. I know everybody's always like, Ezreal's the best deck, it's broken, it needs to be banned, it needs to be changed. But I think this actually is what the game needed to kind of combat Ezreal a little bit. And we are seeing Ezreal not necessarily fall off, but it's not as prevalent as it has been in the past. So hopefully this solves the problem. We'll probably still get some sort of Ezreal change, but we shall see. Now, I do think, however, with something like Purify is obviously the first card everybody thought about. This has two inherent advantages. Obviously, one, it can be a champion as well as a follower, and the other being that you get basically infinite Hush for the turn. You just get fleeting copies added to your hand. It also procs Ezreal if you're playing it with Ezreal, right? So just a lot of advantages to it over Purify. Purify might be permanent, and Hush might be only to the end of the turn, but I don't think that's really that much of a drawback for Hush. So I think it kind of makes Purify irrelevant, and for that reason, I think either Purify needs to go to 1 or Hush needs to go to 4. I think because Hush creates fleeting copies, Hush should probably be at 4. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think Hush is bad at 3. It's really not. It's just more so for the sake of the health of the card game. Purify just becomes useless with Hush. Like, who the hell is going to play Purify? It's like no reason to play Purify. I don't know why that card exists now. So Hush is where it's at. So very happy to see this card in the game. I think it's one of the better cards they've created so far. Very happy to see it. Very happy to see a little bit of a decline in Ezreal. Because don't get me wrong. I love a good Ezreal deck. It feels so rewarding to be able to go off with Ezreal. But Hush doing something about combating this Ezreal. All right, real quick, some special mentions. We got Bastion. Bastion, pretty good card. Not in the top 10, though, because it's not really that great. Bastion, Spell Shield only till the end of turn. The dragons and other things that have Spell Shield on them actually keep it permanently, like Aurelion Sol, right? So Bastion seems okay. Not necessarily the greatest card in the world. And we're really not seeing it played competitively right now either. Whimsy. Pretty good. I would have rather this been more of like a polymorph effect where maybe it costs 5 or 6 and it permanently changes them to 1/1. I imagine we'll get that in a different card effect sometime soon. For the time being, it's not quite as strong because of that. But it is still decent. It is, it is in some Karma Ezreal decks as of late. It's still useful. So definitely worth a mention. Guiding Touch. This is basically just a cycle card, but does provide you some, more burst speed heal, which we, again, don't have a lot of. We got a lot more of it in Call of the Mountain with Targon, and some more draw for any, combo decks you might be trying to cook up. We can't go without mentioning Tribeam Improbulator, another great card that did not kind of seem like a meme, but is actually pretty damn good in Ezreal, in probably Heimer decks. We haven't really seen Heimer much lately, but I do like the card overall. And Jack the Winner. So Improbulator and Jack the Winner are two kind of maybe a little bit more out there cards, but I think they're actually really good, and they enable some funky archetypes that will almost certainly pop up in the future. We've already seen Jack the Winner pop up a lot. I think his effect is really good, and to be a 5/6 body at 5 is just, pretty good card. So that's it, everybody. That's the top 10 with some special mentions there at the end. Again, only one champion. I think the champions weren't really as good as everybody thought they would be this set, and I really don't think Aurelion Sol is all that good either. But that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, don't forget to like it. We will be, if you're catching this video today, I am actually casting the Korean King of Runeterra tournament with Boulevard. We're actually doing a rebroadcast English version of it, so hop on over to my Twitch channel. Link is in the description below if you want to check that out. We will be casting probably all weekend this weekend as well, so as always, you can check me out at my Twitch channel. So as always, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope it just works for you, and peace out.